Hello and welcome to another episode of our podcast. We have a real special guest for you today. Steve Sayer from the O2 in London, the Vice President and General Manager of the venue, is here today. Welcome.
Thank you for having me. Yeah, it's great. Great to be here.
Coming on. Okay, so just to start off with, can you tell people who you are and what you do at the O2?
Yeah, no, sure. I'm effectively the guy, the person who's running the O2. My title, VP and GM, really means I'm the managing director, so responsible for strategy, responsible for kind of overall in charge of all the different functions. Obviously, I've got a great team around me who are running the events on a day-to-day basis, booking the shows, leading on marketing, ticketing. I guess my role is really to pull it all together, to be the figurehead, the person who kind of leads the team.
Yeah.
And hopefully, drives the culture of the business and the culture of the venue. That's really important to me. And I think it's really important that, the leader in charge, sets that agenda and sets a culture such that, we have, a team who are really motivated to work and deliver, to the highest possible level.
Of course. You mentioned your team. The O2 is obviously a huge venue. How many people does it take to make it run as smoothly as possible?
So the O2 is pretty unique as a venue because we have the arena. The O2 arena is the beating heart of the O2. The O2 is actually a campus. We have our giant famous tent and iconic structure, which many people would have seen. And sitting underneath that tent, you have the arena. We have an entertainment district. We have a shopping district. We have a number of big kind of leisure attractions. We have a trampolining park. We have one of the biggest cinemas in London. And actually on top of the roof, we have a roof walk attraction called Up at the O2. So it's a pretty big operation. I always say it's almost like a mini city that we're trying to run.
Feels like that.
With over 10 million visitors a year. So the core team in terms of the AEG team, running the venue overall is about 180 or 190 permanent employees. But then on event nights, with cleaning and with catering and with security and with guest experience and some of the other support functions and contractors who work with us, we would go up to 400 or 500 on every single event night. So it's a pretty big operation.
Sounds like it, yeah. And you're obviously, in charge of all of that. And I was just wondering, do you ever get to see the shows that you're putting on, or is there too much work and there's no way for you to even sneak a little peek?
Well, look, it's when you work in venues, it's always full on, and I'm fortunate to travel to events like this with the EAA and see different venues and how they operate. It is incredibly busy. But yeah, it's fair to say that I do go to quite a few shows, or I'm present at quite a few shows. I may not stay for the entire show. It might be, seeing the promoter before the show with our programming team. It might be just kind of walking the floor and getting a feel for how the operation's running. I could be entertaining some clients or some of our key stakeholders. But yeah, no, I try and get to as many shows as I can. I also want to have a little bit of work-life balance, but I think in any given year, I probably go to 40 or 50 events. So
that's a lot.
It's quite a lot. But I love it. Kind of music and is one of my huge passions. So it in some respect, it's a labor of love, particularly if I like the band that's playing.
Of course. Which leads us on to the next question, which is what is your favorite event that you've ever put on at the O2 during your time there?
Oh, it's such a hard.
I know.
It's a hard question, that. There's probably not a single event that I can point to. There's sort of two or three that come to mind. I'm actually a big sort of dance and electronic music fan.
Really?
That was sort of my thing kind of growing up. So a few years ago, the Chemical Brothers played the O2 for the first time. They're actually playing at the O2 again in early November. That was an incredible show because it's a band that I love, a genre that I love. And actually, we're famous for, the big stars, the big pop and rock acts, the Elton Johns and the U2s, both of whom have played in recent years at the O2. Elton show earlier this year, his farewell tour was absolutely incredible. That was another standout. But actually, in any kind of given year, there's always like one or two shows that surprise me.
Really?
So last year, one of my favorite shows was the Pet Shop Boys, because, you know, I grew up listening to the Pet Shop Boys when I was like 14, 15, 16, when they were coming through. So that was kind of a bit of a nostalgia trip for me. But the other one that stood out, which I didn't really have a particular appreciation or any kind of thought as to kind of how good the show would be, is an artist called Rosalia, who is really blowing up right now. You know, she played her first headline show at the O2. It's incredible. You know, sings in Spanish. There were influences of, you know, flamenco and hip hop, and, you know, it was just a really kind of amazing, powerful show. And she was actually, most of her relation or kind of audience engagement was in Spanish, a little bit of English, but that show blew me away. Really? So yeah, it's there's not one standout, but there are a few that definitely spring to mind. Yeah,
there's too many to choose from. I get it. So what does like the typical day look like at the O2 when you've got an event on? Sort of like talk us through like what it looks like from start to finish.
Yeah, I mean, like every other venue, I mean, for me, it might be a little bit different, but, you know, let's say we had a show last night, you know, that show would show down at maybe 11 o'clock, which is our curfew. You know, that production has to load out by 2 a.m. So, you know, the venue team, production team would oversee that loadout. You know, they would then hand over to, you know, a venue manager and somebody else from our sort of production team who would then manage the load-in. We have between sort of 2 a.m. and 6 a.m. to turn the venue around. We've got to clean every part of the venue. We've got to tidy up backstage. We've got to make sure it's pristine. And then the next, you know, production will roll in. You know, I would typically on event night, depends if I'm going to be around for the show or staying all night. Maybe if it's a high risk show, I might come in a little bit later because it's a long day. But yeah, you know, during the day, it's business. It's the day-to-day stuff. You know, it's not necessarily directly involved in the event itself or the event management, because we've got a brilliant team at the O2 who are taking care of all of that. But, you know, it's checking in with ticketing. You know, are there any issues I need to be aware of? Is there anything unusual about the event? How's the promoter? You know, the programming team, is everything good? Any feedback, anything I need to know about? If it's a high-risk show, I would always check in with our venue director and director of security. So it's just sort of checking in and being aware of, you know, how we believe the event's going to play out. And then as we get into, you know, doors opening, whether it's sort of early doors or, you know, doors would normally be at 6:30. Yeah, and if it's a show that I'm attending, then yeah, definitely I would probably spend a little bit of time, you know, go backstage, you know, see the promoter, you know, walk the floor a little bit, just sort of see what's happening. And then yeah, hopefully enjoy a little bit of the show. You know, it's kind of, even, you know, in the role that I'm in, it's still a perk of the job. And I get a real buzz out of that side of the job. So, yeah, and then, you know, it could mean that, you know, I maybe shoot off at maybe 10 o'clock, 10:30, or, you know, this week, because we're spending quite a bit of time with the promoter and the band's manager. Myself and our senior programming director actually ended up going to the band's end of tour after party, which was in our bowling alley, which was good fun. And, you know, and then it's sort of set and repeat, you know, the sort of following day we've got another show. So it really does vary. It depends on, you know, the nature of the event, you know, who the artist is, you know, and what's sort of happening around that show. Okay.
I mean, it is very full on. I can imagine, you know, from sort of morning to night, like just checking in with.
Yeah, totally. And it's, and all of that's really on top of the other stuff that really is the core of my job, you know, business strategy, you know, ensuring that, you know, an overall level, the O2 is performing, that, you know, we're delivering against all of our KPIs, you know, that we're planning for the future, that, you know, we're, you know, focusing on some of our sustainability goals. And a lot of the time it really is sort of focusing on, you know, how can we support our teams and our people to get the best out of them, you know, create the right environment for, you know, everybody to be successful. Because, you know, I believe if the team are happy and motivated and engaged, you know, that will go a long way towards ensuring that, you know, the venue and the business is ultimately successful.
Yeah, of course. And speaking of the business side of things, you're here for the general meeting of the European Arenas Association. What are the benefits for a venue like the O2 of being in the EAA?
I think the benefits are, we get the opportunity to come out and see how venues in different markets operate. There's a great opportunity to sort of talk to other venues, to network, to kind of talk about some common issues, whether it's, here in Poland or, in Lisbon or even some of the other UK-based venues. We do share a lot of the same, common goals and some of the common issues, and just best practice. Whilst the O2 is very successful and has got an amazing track record for everything that we do, every time I go out to another venue, I'm always learning. I'm always learning about how we can improve, even if it's one aspect of what we do. For me, it's worth the trip. And actually, I encourage a lot of my team to also go out. We do a lot of that, in Europe. I know that the EAA has recently kind of set up an initiative where, venues and venue managers can kind of shadow some of their counterparts in a different market. And that is definitely something that we'll be looking to participate in next year. So it's a mixture of sharing information, kind of chatting, problem solving around particular issues. We've seen some great presentations today that, really interesting suppliers around sort of sustainability and measuring and monitoring carbon footprint and reporting on that. So again, that's another little takeaway that I wouldn't have got if I hadn't come here.
Yeah. Speaking of sustainability, the O2 recently announced that it was going to go forward with carbon removed events. Is that right? Can you tell us a little bit about what that means?
Yeah, so we're really excited about this. Like a lot of venues right across Europe, we're really focused on sustainability. And what do we mean by that? First and foremost, it's about reducing, our carbon emissions. Now, I think the way we think about it is, we're purchasing electricity, which is 100% renewable. We've been doing that for about 9 years. It's from verifiable sources. We're looking at ways to reduce our footprint, whether that's the way that we segregate our waste to ensure that nothing is going to landfill or the absolute minimum is going to landfill, and at the O2 it's less than 1%. As we spoke about earlier, we've been trialing and experimenting with different types of reusable cup, and that's something that we'll look to action next year when we find the right model for us, and we think we've now found it, but we firmly believe that reusable cups is the way forwards. But the carbon removed gig bit is the bit where you kind of go, we're still, and as many businesses are, we're power hungry. We're doing what we can with our LED lighting, with improving some of the efficiency of some of our plant and heavy equipment, the kind of the HVAC and our chiller system, and that will go so far. And we're pretty good on scope 1 and 2. We're very, very close to net zero on scope 1 and 2, but the big challenge is scope 3. And having done quite a lot of research on this in the UK, working with Greener Future, who are our sort of current sort of consultant partner in that space, we've got a really accurate view of our baseline for scope 1, 2, and 3. We did it in 2022. Well, actually, we've got it. We've got it. Original baseline was 2019, sort of pre-pandemic, if I can say it. We did it again in 2022. We're doing it again this year. But the challenge is around scope 3. And I guess that the point of sort of carbon removed gigs is it's not about offsetting the scope 3s, which largely come from fans traveling to the venue. Sort of 70 to 80% of our scope 3s are related to fan travel. And then a large part of the residual is related to the tours inbound travel to the venue. So by working with a company called Curate, who are really a consultancy, but they're experts in carbon removal technology. So what we have done is work with a Greener Futures and Curate to work out how much carbon do we need to remove from the atmosphere for those 4 1975 shows to completely mitigate the emissions that we haven't already accounted for.
Okay.
And it's based on a sort of tonnage model. And we worked out the cost of the actual physical cost of removing that carbon. So this is not offsetting carbon, it's physically removing the carbon from the atmosphere. I'm not the expert, but Curate are the experts. And, and it varies from, tree planting initiatives that do have a role to play, but they're much longer term. There's some more sort of nature-based kind of carbon removal techniques, just scientifically, it's technology-led, physically sucking the carbon out of the air.
Okay.
And it works out based on the tonnage that we need to remove. Offset's not the right word. It works out at 90p per ticket. So what we agreed with the 1975, and this is the sort of the important bit, because this is a part of that sort of world first model, is that the ticket price included 90p per ticket, which the fan will pay to remove the carbon attributed to it's the average carbon per trip to the O2. In addition to that, the venue is paying to remove any carbon that we haven't accounted for at the venue. We're also going to cover the cost of the inbound tour coming into the venue, and our catering partner Levy are going to pay to remove what's left from theirs. So it's a pretty unique model. So on those 4 shows, all the carbon associated with those, with the event, with opening the venue, with, turning the lights on, turning the power on, show power, and all of the fan travel will be removed from the atmosphere. So it's a really interesting pilot. We got a great reaction from the 1975 fan base. There was no pushback on the 90p. There was no pushback from the band. They were, delighted to be involved. Very, very supportive of the initiative. Is this the model for all future shows? I don't know. We don't know that yet, but it's certainly a really interesting experiment, and we're looking forward to, sort of publishing the results post February.
Yeah, sounds fascinating.
Yeah.
I was going to ask, do you think that's the way forward? You've just said that. You're not sure.
It could be part of the solution. Obviously, I think all venues, everybody in the live music ecosystem has got a role to play. From the artist to, the tour and production teams, to the venue caterers, to the venue itself, the promoter, the whole kind of live music ecosystem has got a role to play. I think what this is potentially going to show is, and demonstrate that the fan has also got a role to play. And I don't think from a personal point of view, you can push all the cost onto the end user, the fan in this case. I think the venue has got to take responsibility, and we're investing heavily. We're paying to remove the carbon, directly attributed to us. So we feel like we're doing our bit. We are asking, and the band are asking the fan to do their bit. So it's a very much a sort of collaborative effort.
Okay. Brilliant. Thank you so much. That's the end of my questions, really. Thank you so much for coming on and for your time. It was a pleasure to have you.
Okay.
Thank you for listening, guys. We'll see you in the next one.